Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this event where we are launching the Digital Europe new paper on the street. Digital action is climate action. You can find it on our webpage and download it, and hopefully it will bring new insights on how to accelerate the twin transition. So Ursula von der Leyen came out with her great vision of a more digital, a stronger digital Europe, but also a greener Europe. How do they actually walk hand in hand? And have we really understood the potential of digital and greening the economy, greening our society, and maybe we can even say saving the globe? So today we'll look into exactly this. And during my speech and during the event, you will have polls popping up to stimulate the discussion. So please do answer it so we can get some insight in what you are thinking. So let's look at exactly how the transition will take place and what does that actually mean. So Digital Europe, first of all, for the ones of you who should not know, we are representing around 36,000 companies, small and big, in Europe. So we are Europe and beyond, meaning that we are also in Switzerland, Norway, and many other places. We also represent industries like the manufacturing industry, the health industries, and others. So we are very concerned on how digital plays a role in other sectors than just our own. Let me jump to this first slide. So on global warming, we know that we need to limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. We need to do that. We need to cut deep in the CO2 emissions and, of course, other greenhouse gases. And I don't think we have an alternative. We all know what the flooding this summer meant. If we look at Europe, what the fires meant all over the world, we have huge problems with our environment as it stands right now. But how many actually knows that digital play a major role in bringing down the CO2 emissions in key sectors, but actually also prevention of catastrophes and to actually handle if there should be a catastrophe. So let's look out at how this looked like. Let's look at digital is a key, what the digital is a key to. Let's flip to the next slide. So basically, I mean, we need to collect data to better understand and monitor the climate change. We need to understand how we can use tools to monitor climate changes and potential upcoming catastrophes. Of course, we understand that the digital sector also needs to limit our CO2 emissions. But actually, right now, we are one of the key leading sectors on how to do that. And we would like to share that knowledge to other sectors on how they can use digital to bring down CO2. We know that the data centers will increase their capacity with around 60%, but actually have a total steady CO2 emission. And who knows, maybe we can get even further down. So let's flip to the next slide. So by 2030, digital technologies will have the potential of actually bringing down CO2 emissions with 20%. So the question is the how. And this is exactly why. Let's try to look at the next slide. And this is exactly why we are launching our new study, which says digital action is climate action, where we are looking at key sectors and the most polluting sectors and how they can bring down their CO2 levels by use of artificial intelligence, better connectivity, not least collecting data and data analysis and finding out exactly what the impact is. Also, we are engaging heavily in actually defining a taxonomy of what does it actually mean, how the digital and the environment works together in bringing down CO2 levels. Let's jump to the next slide. So, how have we done this? We have looked at exactly this, the key sectors, the main polluting sectors. We know that buildings today stand for 40% of the CO2 emission. Energy, manufacturing, transport, and not least agriculture are some of the key polluting sectors. So how can we actually have that twin transition go hand in hand, collect the right data, analyze the right data, and use drones, use artificial intelligence, use 5G for actually bringing down those emissions? So if we look at the study, we have a lot of case studies in there. I will only mention 3 here. So one of them being, for example, how the city of Vienna actually had a decrease of 71% of CO2 emissions in their buildings in their city by use of technology and artificial intelligence and data analysis. We can also look at the port of Rotterdam, where they're able to reduce 50% of carbon emissions by 2030 by optimizing the route planning system. Or, for example, how in Belgium they can inject 5 to 6% more renewable energy into the grid by use of artificial intelligence tools. These are only 3 of the examples that you will find in our paper. And hopefully this will be the first of many papers in the work of the twin transition. And this is really about the how, having a profound understanding of how we can actually do that and how other sectors can use digital technologies to bring down their CO2 levels. So let us jump to the next slide. So we are actually introducing 8 ideas on how we can, first of all, of course, set ambitious KPIs for bringing down the CO2 levels within the sectors. We need sector-specific plans on this. We need sector-specific plans on the KPIs, on how to invest, on which technologies to develop, and how to actually get it implemented in Europe. We also need to see what are the data that needs to be collected. How do we store them? What is the connectivity we need to actually use the technologies in these sectors? And not least, what are the technologies that we need to monitor if the catastrophe or prevent the catastrophe from happening? Let's jump to the next slide. So if we look at this twin transition, you can say it's a little bit like a house. On top, we need to know where we are going. What are the KPIs that we are setting? In the manifesto in 2019, Digital Europe set those KPIs for the first time, and the Commission came out also with their KPIs on how to implement the twin transition. Then, of course, we need the how. What are the skills? What is the training? How do we enable citizens and professionals to actually implement the plan? What are the standards, the common standards, the data standards, the measurement standards, the taxonomy standards that we actually need to make this happen in an interoperable way across Europe, but also in a global leadership with our major trading partners? What are the investments and the research and development programs that we need to run from the industry together with the public sector to actually reach the target? And not least, the data. What data needs to be collected, and how do we make sure that we have platforms to disseminate them and actually get the connectivity to make it work on ground with the agricultural players, with the sectorial players of manufacturing and buildings? So how do we get there? This is exactly why we have invited a great panel. Let's flip to the next slide. And great speakers. We have Daniel Mess, member of Cabinet from Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans' Cabinet. We have Marc, who is Senior Vice President for Energy and Management Software from Schneider Electric. We have Florian, who is from Agoria, our Belgium association. She's business group leader in digital in Agoria and also an executive board member of Digital Europe. We have Jill Duggan, Executive Director of Environment and Defense Fund, and not least, all this will be facilitated by the moderator Felice Simonelli from CEPS. So I hope that you will enjoy the panel and stay online. Please answer our surveys, and let's find out how digital and the climate action goes hand in hand towards bringing down the CO2 emissions. Thank you.
Apparently I am on mute, so the apologize for this bad start. Let's try again. So good morning everybody, and welcome once again to this very topical Digital Europe event on uniting the twin transitions. There is no Green Deal without digital. I would like to start by thanking Miss Cecilia Bonefeld-Dahl for such an inspiring keynote speech. The digital sector is indeed contributing to cutting carbon emissions and advancing towards the EU Green Deal goals. I'm therefore very eager to read this brand new Digital Europe report and share it with my colleagues working on the twin transition. Before I forget, I also need to do some housekeeping, so please sit down and take some notes because I have a long list for this. So the event will be recorded and published on the Digital Europe website. You can use the chat function. It should be on the right of your screen to ask questions or make comments. Feel free also to thumbs up questions you would like to be asked. For networking purposes, you can use the People tab on the right. To find other attendees, you can click on someone to start a private chat or to invite them for a one-to-one video call. Do not forget that the web platform hosting this event will stay active for 30 minutes after the conclusion of the webinar. This will be a great opportunity for you to network with the other participants. As mentioned by Cecilia, there are 2 polls currently live that will be closed soon, so head over to the polls tab to vote. At the end of the event, another poll will be available. This is to collect feedback and to tell us if you like this event or not. You can also tweet along the event by using the hashtag Digital4Climate. So I've done my housekeeping, and now let's go back to the twin transition. So as already mentioned in the keynote speech by Cecilia, as a matter of fact, digital technologies have the potential to cut global emissions by a fifth by 2030. Therefore, it is key to understand how to unleash the full potential of such technologies and make sure they will effectively support Europe's most carbon-intensive sectors in their quest for carbon neutrality. From building to transport, from farming to energy systems, data-driven insights are helping the private and public sector to radically improve their material and energy efficiencies and to cut both waste and energy consumption. In this context, we have seen that the von der Leyen Commission has shown clear strategic direction, putting the green and digital transitions on top of the political agenda as the 2 main trends shaping the future of Europe. While much progress has been done in the strategic thinking, however, we still see too often in reality these 2 goals are considered in isolation. If we really intend to achieve the EU climate goals while ensuring the European industrial competitiveness on a global scale, then we do need to accelerate the twin, both the digital and the green transition. The question, therefore, is not if we need to accelerate it, but how to accelerate it. So, against this background, in the next hour, we are going to discuss with 4 distinguished panelists why it is so important to look at digital and climate together. What can digital do concretely to support climate action, and what needs to be done to make the twin transition happen? So, our panelists that have already been presented by Cecilia will have 5 minutes each for sharing with us their views on the topic. At the end of this first round, all speakers will have another couple of minutes each for additional remarks. I will then open the floor to questions from the audience. As mentioned before, all attendees are invited to type their questions in the chat box on the right of the screen. So they are telling me that the results of the polls are ready, so maybe we can share them on the screen and present them before the panel will start. So the first question is about the twin transition and if it is a reality and more than a Brussels bubble term. And the answer seems to be that it is indeed more a term, but require more action. So, I mean, this is really the perfect answer for this webinar because we are trying to find which this action should be. Maybe we can also look at the second poll if possible. So the second poll is about your awareness of the twin transition and why it matters. So it seems that most of you are very familiar with the term, some of you somewhat, but I mean, I'm happy to see that all the participants know what is the twin transition and why it matters. So we can maybe now go back to the panel, and I think that we are on time, and without further ado, let me ask Daniel from the European Commission a couple of questions. So Daniel, thank you for joining us, and thank you also to Florian, Gilles, and Marc for being here today. I will start with Daniel. So Daniel, first, how do we make sure that the twin thinking is not only understood in Brussels, but it is fully embraced throughout Europe? And I have also a second and equally important question. This European Commission has shown great strategic leadership. We all know what is the twin transition, it's clear. But how do we concretely make this twin transition happen in every European member state?
Thank you very much. I hope that everybody can can hear me. It's always a bit of an exciting moment. No, it's really, really wonderful to be back with Digital Europe and all these other friends on this call, because I cannot agree more with the title of the whole event. There is no Green Deal without digital. There's no doubt in my mind that is the case. And then when you ask me, like, how can we make that a reality? I think that like 18 months ago, I was at the Masters of Digital conference, and then I used the phrase, like, if we look at these very ambitious targets that we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to move to a circular economy, that these targets in themselves, they are a call to arms. They are a call to arms to everybody working on digital technology and innovation to help us achieve these very ambitious goals, to cut indeed these emissions. So when you say, there are people who believe that our strategies under the Green Deal and our digital transition strategies are working in isolation, that is certainly not the intention, because for me, digital is a big weapon, if not the biggest weapon, to help us achieve our climate goals that we set under the Green Deal. And I think that is also an important message to keep on repeating and to make it also live on the ground, and just with very concrete suggestions and examples, like both in Brussels and in the capitals, but even in the cities and the regions in Europe. If I would choose my snapshot from the pandemic, because let's face it, the pandemic has been a horrendous moment in humanity, but it's also been a wonderful moment in humanity, because we really showed as human beings that our innovation will not be beaten. And even if we have the most severe circumstance, we will find new ways to move around, to live. So when I have a snapshot from the pandemic, it's really these smart metros in the cities that could accurately predict how many people were on the tram and when social distancing needed to be in place. And then you had cities where people could actually get off the metro and then go on bike lanes, because the city had thought about sustainable transport in its city. So this really shows that if you do the twin transitions together on the ground in a city, you have digital and sustainable infrastructure going together, you are more resilient. You are more resilient to crises. And that is the message that we need to deliver to everyone also in Europe. So my answer to you is, like, we should read the targets that we set as a call to arms for technology to help us reach these goals. And of course, we can always see how we can improve things in terms of policy making, but there are people really working very seriously on this, on making this work together, and I am amongst them. But the most important thing is that also people on this call, the innovators themselves, think, like, oh, I know that a national policymaker or a city policymaker is having a tremendous challenge renovating, insulating homes in their neighborhood, making sure that there is good use of space for renewables. We can't put wind farms everywhere, or is facing a transport challenge, that they then think themselves and reflect, and, well, I have a solution for that, a technological solution, and then go there. Another element that is really key before I round off in all of this, and I think that the digital sector knows this very well, is that, of course, this only gets off the ground when people trust it, when people trust the use of digital technology in this way. So that is why the agenda of Ms. Vestager and Mr. Breton on the values that we need to protect in our digital world is so important for the Green Deal too. But it also goes for the contribution that digital technology can make to the climate agenda. I think that people need the trust to see that actually really will happen. I myself come from a country where the first, municipal oppositions to new data centers can arise because people literally see it as a black box, and I don't know what's happening in there, and will it use all my energy? And we need to all account that together and work on that trust. And what is important there is that we all work on a clear metric for the digital enablement, and some framework to deploy this in a sustainable way. The technology. Lots of work has already been going on because oh boy or woman since the 18 months at Master of Digital, we've moved a lot already. Yeah? We have the European Green for Digital, the European Digital for Green coalition. We now have a paper from Digital Europe too, which I indeed will also read with interest. And we know what the challenge is when we're calculating this metric. We all know it. We know that we need to, when we make the choice, what is the footprint of the technology itself when we deploy it? How many emissions can it avoid? We need to calculate that, and that's really difficult. I know that, but we need to look at also like some possible rebound effects that you have. When you use more technology, you get more, you get more use of it. I'm not saying that then the decision should be to not deploy the technology. I don't think that is the option, but you may then have to have a discussion on the framework conditions under which that technology rollout takes place. In any event, in my mind, no policymaker working on the Green Deal, be it myself or be it like somebody working in the cities on renovations or on the transport system or farming of the future, nobody can work seriously on this without a plan for digital. There's no doubt in my mind for that. We need these decisions to go together. And even if we do it, and if we think ahead, we can do it right. Because, if you look at, take farming as an example, you can, of course, give lots of gadgets to farmers so that they can do precision farming. But if you move to a system where they use fertilizers as a service, where, they contract for a certain amount of fertilizer when they need it without buying them up front, and the company delivers it when they need it, then you make a jump even in terms of doing climate action and circular at the same time. So no policymaker on the Green Deal can work without a plan for digital. And that applies across the board. We need these decisions to go together. And I'm very happy that Cecilia and her colleagues now gave us with this document a bit of a blueprint to also look at and to seriously work with. And I will indeed read it. We'll read it very soon at my breakfast reading. In my case, it also means first getting some kids out with some porridge to school, and then a moment to read it very much in detail. But thank you very much for the invitation, and looking forward to discussing this really very, very important topic.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I understand that you are a supporter of the twin transition, and also I see that there is a strong need to go at the local level to make this happen, also by providing better information on available solutions. I will now ask Florian to provide the perspective of the Belgian tech sector. Florian, why it is so important to look at the digital and climate action together? And my second question is the twin transition already a reality in Belgium? What needs to be done to foster the uptake of digital technologies while achieving sustainability goals?
Thank you, Felice. So first of all, I am very happy to be here today and to participate in this panel discussion, because I'm really utterly convinced that indeed digital technology can help reduce the carbon footprint in other sectors. And I mean, you have various studies, and Cecilia mentioned one of them showing that digital can really help reduce the carbon footprint. You have the GAZI study, you have the German study from Accenture and Bitkom. For Belgium, we also launched a new study last month, and we should have the results at the beginning of next year. And we really want to identify the best use cases in order to reduce the carbon footprint of other sectors, thanks to digital technologies. now, studies, it's good, but it's also good to have very concrete examples. And in Belgium, we have a couple of examples which are quite interesting. Cecilia mentioned one of them for energy, for example, with Hology, where thanks to an AI solution, they were able to inject 5 or 6% more renewable energy on the grid. So I think that's a good example. In the manufacturing sector, that's an example I like very much. That's a company called Orbis, based in Flanders. And Orbis produces copper rod that its customers later process into copper wire or cables. And you know, this client, they also have scrap at the end of the day. And Orbis can take back this scrap, and thanks to a data modeling system, they are able to optimize the recycling process and to shorten the production process. And thanks to that, they can save energy and carbon. One more example is in the building sector, and that's a German company, but also based in Belgium, Siemens. And thanks to technology, they could implement those technologies in a hotel and reduce the carbon footprint by 23%. So again, here are 3 very concrete examples of what can be done. But I would say we are not there yet. That's very nice examples and very interesting, but we should, you know, share those examples and have concrete recommendations to make this transition concrete. And here I think there are 3 types of recommendations. First of all, awareness creation. I think Danielle mentioned it as well. I mean, awareness creation at European level, at national level, but also for companies, for citizens, about what is possible with digital technologies. Also, what's important is the horizontal measures. And for example, we really need skills, digital skills or technical skills, in order to implement those technologies, to develop them. And in Belgium, for example, for the moment, we have 8,000 vacancies for digital experts. And that's a Belgian problem, that's a European problem, but that's very important to find a solution. Data cooperation is also very important as a horizontal measure. And now Europe is developing these European data spaces. I think it's very important. Digital Europe is participating. Agoria, for us, we're also actively participating in this initiative, also with Gaia X and so on. So that's for horizontal measures. Now you also have important vertical measures to improve the uptake of these digital technologies in the other sectors. And here, I mean, I think you can have many priorities, but maybe I would select like priorities in 3 sectors. For the building sector, for example, there you have the directive for energy performance of buildings, and each member state is supposed to have a calculation method in order to implement this directive. And in Belgium, for the moment, digital technologies are not included in this methodology, where it is the case in the Netherlands. So I think we really have to push for the adoption of the digital technologies in the methodology. For energy, it's essential, it's really crucial to invest in smart meters and in digitalization of the whole grid. Because thanks to this digitalization, it will be possible to have a dynamic pricing system. And what does it mean? It means that when you have consumption peaks, it's better not to charge your car at that time. It's better to charge your car at night at 3 o'clock in the morning. And thanks to a dynamic pricing system, you can have a low price at that moment and encourage people to do it at that moment. For manufacturing, I think having a 5G infrastructure and a good telecom network is essential. Because thanks to 5G, for example, you can really improve your production process and reduce your carbon emissions. And for manufacturing, for SMEs, what is quite important as well is to support the investment in energy monitoring and management systems for those SMEs. Because like this, they can identify where they can improve the carbon reduction. So I think here you have a couple of examples. I'm very happy to answer to questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florian. I mean, I fully agree on this need to action, and I understand that awareness, horizontal measure and vertical measure are there to be implemented to make the twin transition happen. I would like like now to hear more from Gilles. Gilles, the Environmental Defense Fund has been playing a key role in tackling environmental and climate challenges. So, what are your views on the twin transitions? Which policy changes do you believe are needed to make it happen? And what role do you see for digital to tackle climate change?
Thank you. Well, in the 20 odd years that I've been involved in climate and energy policy in Europe, it's been a mantra that you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think one of the transformations that's happened over the last couple of decades is our ability to measure emissions and monitor emissions, inputs and outputs, in a way that was unthinkable 15, 20 years ago. And an example of that would be the European Commission with UNEP and Environmental Defense Fund are all involved in the International Methane Emissions Observatory, which is using digital technology and satellites to measure emissions of methane, which we know is an extremely powerful greenhouse gas that's responsible for a lot of the warming we're experiencing at the moment. But these are things that were unthinkable 10, 15 years ago. One of the key issues on the agenda at COP26 starting next week is transparency. And we used to have to rely on states to report through their inventories in the UN on their emissions, but it's becoming more and more possible using digital technologies and satellites to understand exactly where the large sources of emissions are and to verify what is actually happening, which helps us build our models of what's happening in climate change across the world, as well as noting where those infractions, if you like, are happening and where the problems need solving. On a micro level, some of that measurement can help us manage emissions really locally, and Environmental Defense Fund has been involved in a variety of projects looking at air quality, often caused by greenhouse gases, where you can get policy measures right at a very local level. You can see spikes in nitrous oxide emissions caused by bus drivers idling their engines in places, so you can change behaviors. But I think there's also, as Florian and Daniel have talked about, there's also the changes that have been able to be affected on the kind of input side. We can manage demand side for energy far more effectively on a much more micro level than we ever have been able to before, which means that our ability to use renewable energy is increased beyond what we thought would be possible even again 10, 15 years ago. This improves all the time. We can manage the resources needed. So I think the estimates are that we can use just 30% of the steel in buildings or in cars that we needed previously, because digital technologies allow us to measure at a far more granular level exactly what is needed to be safe. And I think we've already had raised the fact that digital technologies are allowing us in this sort of post-pandemic or mid-pandemic world to continue to do things like use public transport, but staying safe by being able to see where's busy, which are the busiest carriages on a train and so forth, so that we can avoid those and we can keep socially distanced and keep safe. And I think that points to some of the things that we ought to be looking at for the future. We are at this point where we've had the mantra over the last 18 months, 2 years of building back better, which we are doing with greater or lesser success. But I think we have realized that digital technologies have helped a lot of us, not all of us, change the way we work. That's changing again, but it helps us plan our future. And I think we can look at digital technologies to help us create not just a greener world, but also a pleasanter world, better lives for us, where we can start to evaluate how we can have the 15-minute city, or how people can actually have walking distance to work rather than a car commute or a public transport commute, help us be fitter, as well as reduce our energy use, and also work in communities more. So we might be doing remote working to our organization, but working in a community of people who live near us exchanging ideas and having those benefits as well. So I think the challenge for policymakers now is to recognize that there is huge potential that can be harnessed with digital technologies, that it really has gives us the opportunity to create a world which is greener, less damaging to the planet, and hopefully starting to repair some of that damage, but can also have a really positive effect on our lives if we think about it carefully. We can live in homes that are more comfortable, warmer to live in without increasing our energy use. We can have shorter journeys to work. We can have interaction with our neighbors. We can use it for the circular economy. There's lots and lots of great things, but the warning being is that there are often missteps along the way. And what we don't want to do is to tie ourselves into things that look at like they're what we need today, but they're inappropriate for tomorrow. So swapping out rather than thinking holistically for the future. So I think, I'm joining the chorus of saying huge opportunity, really, huge things have happened, and there's a lot more that can be done that's to our benefit, but we need to think about it carefully and we need to plan it holistically. Thank you.
Florian, thank you very much. So I like the fact that you placed the emphasis on the ability of digital to measure the green transition. But also I liked your last point about the fact that digital technologies can make also the green transition better and fairer for people, because we are hearing in the last days a lot about the cost of the green transition, and it seems that the digital transition can also help to reduce this cost and give more benefit to citizens. I would now like to listen Marc's view, the view of a large European company that operates globally, like Schneider Electric. So, Marc, what are the obstacles that European companies are facing when attempting to embrace the twin transition? And how do you believe that we can measure the success of the twin transition, both at the company level, but maybe also on the entire European economy?
Thank you so much, Felice. And so, yes, first, I would suggest to be clear on 2 points. The first one is actually to make sure we are all on the same page, that we have no choice. So while discussing Green Deal and digital, actually we are not discussing here business or technology. We are discussing here actually a human challenge, and we have no other choices than to address it now. So those 2 things are very important. No choices, and it's now. And the awareness is key, meaning that I don't know if some of you are familiar with a literature that is getting more and more popular around the psychology of climate change. But wherever we are on the planet, whatever is our age, we take different decisions, and we have a different awareness on the topic. And the more we increase, let's say, knowledge, the more the awareness is high, the more we take informed decision and decision towards decarbonization. The second point that I believe we all should agree upon is that there is not one miracle solution to the challenge, and I think it was raised by Jill. It was also raised by Daniel, and somehow also very much into the diversity of the example brought by Florian. But the answer is systemic to such a problem that we face. And you remember what Cecilia said at the beginning, that within the report, and the remarkable report the Digital Europe is publishing, you get actually 8 ideas to the twin transition. And I invite you to reflect separately on each of those 8 ideas, and you will easily find that actually each of those ideas can have stronger impact if others are implemented as well. I mean, it's a true systemic approach that we should have. Then I don't know if I want to answer your question on obstacles. because I don't think that's that the word I would use, obstacle. I would take it the other way around. I would take it as an opportunity to upskill. Again, to lead us to make the right decision, we need to be better educated, better informed. It's about upskilling. I would also mention the opportunity on incentives, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on. And also the opportunity that sometimes a constraint that we get to do something, to comply to standards or whatever, is also an opportunity, a business opportunity, and also we should take it, in my opinion, positively. But going back to incentives, I think we can all agree that by mixing Green Deal to digital, actually, we cannot be only eligible to public incentives, monetary incentives, but you have as well very positive side effect, attractivity towards investors, attractivity from young generation as an employer. So I would say that combining digital and Green Deal, you can provide to many companies, many organizations, a sincere sense of purpose that is not just business and technology, but which is to address that challenge that we mentioned. Okay, so no obstacle. I would push back that word. I would say it's opportunities that we take or we don't take. And the best way to take them is to be properly informed and aware about the opportunities that are brought by those technologies. Then allow me to be a bit concrete on two aspects that we expect from Europe to take differently and to really lead the pack on the world stage. The first one is really the necessity to raise standards to force compliance or to stimulate the necessity for compliance. And on that, we really count on the EU to lead the pack towards measuring carbon footprint. We said the importance of measurement. We need to be precise on what we want to measure. The carbon footprint, the environmental footprint of any constituting elements of buildings, of cities, of transport, of farming, across the life cycle of each of those processes is extremely important. Digital technologies are here to support that measurement, and the measurement has to be precise and by sector. Second, concrete element, we see as well very positively the EU's plan for a common European data space. And if you combine it with a Green Deal, we face here a unique opportunity to promote the pooling of sustainability data. And that would really define the singularity of a European sustainability data space to the benefit of the society. Not a defensive approach of a data space, a very offensive, positive to the benefit of society, to have actually a European sustainability data space supporting measurement, awareness for faster and better decision. That's what I wanted to share, Felice.
Thank you very much, Marc. So I understand no obstacles, or at least better not focus on obstacles, but on opportunities. I understand the need for a systemic approach, and I also understand a need for more Europe, because we can do more together if we tackle the issue at the EU level and create more efficiencies. So I want to remind to the attendees that they can ask their question in the chat box. I've already seen some coming, so feel free to ask more, and we will try to answer your question in the Q&A session. But before moving to the Q&A session, as mentioned, I would like to give each of you 2 more minutes to provide additional remarks on the point made by the other. Let's follow the same order as before. So I will start again from Daniel. The floor is yours, Daniel.
Yeah, no, like thanks a lot, and I heard lots of things that were like really very very interesting, at least for me to hear. Like I totally agree with the point by Floriana that we also need to work on our horizontal policies, like that people have the skills and also the framework to share the data in a good way. We were, as a cabinet of Executive Vice President Timmermans, also really strong proponents of these common data spaces, exactly for that reason. Not only because it's good to have a framework that people can trust to share the data with each other, but also because it's then open also for SMEs who might face otherwise a challenge, like how on earth am I going to do this and be part of the digital revolution? If you can say to an SME, you have a common data space with a trusted framework that is hand delivered to you, that empowers them to all be part of this. And that's also an important point that Jill and made, like, because this is also like local empowerment that you're really talking about, and that can go to the most basic thing. In Holland, you have cities. The city of Utrecht is using cyclists that have sensors on their bikes to measure air quality. Now, how Dutch can a picture get, right? Like a Dutch like a cyclist technology measuring it. So for the local inclusion, that is indeed super important, and we work hand in hand with our colleagues in the digital cluster in the Commission to work on that. I take a lot of confidence and comfort from the fact that I really like Jill's quote, like, you can only manage what you measure, and I think that is really true here. And Marc's call then for Europe to lead in showing what we measure and have that thought leadership in Europe. I take that challenge partially upon me to indeed work with all of you on that, because I think we want that European leadership in this field, in sustainable technology. I like the idea to have a common data space also for that. So because this will not only matter now in the here and now, but it will also matter for the future, because with the Internet of Things, where you have like the greatest opportunities to connect the world around you and make even better use of technology, they also come with more connected devices. And we talk about the smartphones right now, the material use, and like when I can repair, when can I reuse it? But there will be a huge challenge with those new devices too, with all these connected devices. So the more we can pool now in terms of knowledge, and the more we can measure, the better you can prepare for all of this.
Thank you, Daniel. So, Florian, you're around now.
Yes, thank you. First I want to react to Danielle, because I'm very happy to hear that the Commission is very proactively busy with this topic and to find a solution in order to encourage digital solution as a solution for carbon reduction. I think it's going to happen anyway, but it would be very useful that Digital Europe or business federations such as Agoria can work together with the Commission in order, to find solutions together. About what Jill said about the measurement, I think that's key. That's key to the problem, because of course if we want to reach the goals and we want to also avoid greenwashing, we have to measure, to monitor emissions, and that's very crucial in order to solve this problem. And I would like also to react to Marc. I really like the way he said, we shouldn't see it as obstacles, but it would be better to see it as an opportunity. Because that's really what I see as well with our companies. More and more companies are making the switch, are being more and more innovative in order to find solutions. And that's also what we want to do with our study. I told you before we launched a study last month, and we want to identify use cases, best practices, and to make concrete recommendations to companies, but also to the national authorities, in order to make it concrete and to make it become an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Florian. Gilles.
is the point that Florian raised, which is true for digital skills, but also across the green transition, if you like, is the need to reskill. And I think Florian mentioned 8,000 vacancies in Belgium alone. And that is a horrific problem, really, if we scale that up to Europe. And getting policymakers to think about how we can bridge those gaps, get the reskilling in place, get the incentives and the right level of education available at the different career points. Because one of the things that we are having with the green transition, obviously, is some jobs become less sustainable, and there are these needs for new skills and experience. And I think that's a real challenge that we need to face head on, and that I don't see enough discussion of about how we're going to manage that challenge. You know, you can look at it in other areas as well, but as we change the way we do things and the backups there, then we really do need to address that. I think the other thing that the kind of you can't manage what you don't measure, and the other thing alongside that and the transparency is the increasing need for companies and organizations to be prepared to go public with their data in a way that previously was very, very difficult. I think many companies felt that this was you know, commercially sensitive, sometimes when it wasn't, certainly reputationally sensitive occasionally. So we need to find a new culture where companies and organizations are even more prepared to be to lead the way on setting out their statistics, if you like, particularly on their energy usage and on how they manage a lot of the emissions and how they manage their inputs. So I think that there is a need for a culture shift for a green transition that enables organizations and encourages organizations to be much more public and transparent with their data. We have big data, we need to know what it is and to be able to use it effectively.
Thank you, Gillian. I'm happy that Marc comes after you, because you know, one of the questions that I immediately have for him is, are European companies ready to be more transparent, not only to use data but also to show their data?
Yes, I mean the transparency goes alongside with the appetite to address the challenge. And the transparency, again, we come back to measurement, but starts by measurement and by facing actually the impact we can create. And what I could share here with you, and I think it was Daniel who also at the beginning was talking about let's say the necessity as well for the digital world and the IT world to be also efficient in itself, its non-operation. So it's the let's say digital is part of the solution in two ways, in the way that we can support transparency, measurements, to put in a common basket, let's say the sustainability data and so on and so forth. But the IT world, digital world, is also a world of energy efficiency. And here, what I could share with you in full transparency is a result of two surveys that we've been doing. We've been doing a survey on 50 data centers energy efficiency project that we've been conducting before end of 2019. So we made a survey in 2020, and we could see that actually we were able to save, thanks to digital technologies, 24% energy consumption. And that, combined with the right energy mix, led actually of CO2 footprint reduction by 50% on those 50 data center. Also, another thing around transparency and how digital is also in general conscious of its own carbon footprint. I can share with you some data points on the fact that today, let's say, the share of energy-related emissions that could be given to data centers, telecom infrastructure, and so on and so forth, was in 2020 of 2.8%. or can we estimate 2023 around 3% of, let's say, the worldwide share in energy-related emission could be attributed to the digital world? It means to do more digital is not at the expense of climate. It's really at the benefit as well of solving the topic, if that might address the transparency topic. And a very last data point also on transparency, the share within the electricity demand of the IT sector is 8.7%. So you remember we discussed how much the building world can impact, how much transport is impacting, how much agriculture. So let's be clear, the entire IT sector represents 8.7% in 2020 of the worldwide electricity demand, which I would say is reasonable given the impact it has on our life.
Thank you very much, Marc. This is way more what I expected from asking you that question. So you were very prepared with that. Thank you very much. So I think that now it's time to see what are the questions of our audience. And I see here a quite interesting questions from Orange. This is about investment. So, I mean, we are speaking about the twin transition, and we all agree that we need it, but the transition will cost. The question here is how to foster investment in digital infrastructure across the EU while not having them fully included in the green taxonomy criteria. So what are your views on the green taxonomy when it comes to the digital sector? I would ask Daniel to start answering this question because the green taxonomy is commission business, but if any of you want to also intervene, feel free to do it. Daniel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Our taxonomy basically is this menu of like types of investments in different technologies, where we tell private investors, financial investors, if you invest in this technology, that is in line with our pathway towards climate neutrality in 2050, Europe's pathway. So this investment is safe because this investment will be sustainable in 2050. That's the purpose of the taxonomy, nothing more and nothing less. So it's intended to be a tool that to guide the financial investors. Some digital infrastructure has already been included because you need to reflect the fact that these two transitions need to go together somewhere. So some technology is already in there. Data centers that follow the code of conduct on their energy and resource and carbon footprint. Some other promising technologies are in there. And indeed, the challenge, because the question comes from Orange, and I know I'm aware of the particular challenge of the networks, the telecoms networks here. The fact that a sector hasn't been included right now doesn't mean that it will stay out entirely. There were other sectors too where we just didn't have enough meat on the bones yet to say under these conditions we can indeed say they're fine, that they should go into the taxonomy as a green technology for the future. It happened to aviation, it happened to certain parts of our transport system, and also happened with the telecoms networks. Because so far we don't have, for the telecom sector, to give you an example, the same type of EU code of conduct as we have for the data centers on material use and resource use and carbon footprint. Because a 5G network, we don't purely lay that out to cut emissions. We do that for other really good things, for really wonderful things. But that's the challenge that we face. So I guess that once we're a bit further, also with the sector on that point, on the type of code of conduct thing, then we should have a talk again about taxonomy. But there will be a new round for this.
Thank you, Daniel. Any other of you want to intervene, or we go to the next question? Let's go to the next one. This is a question on the public sector. We have heard a lot about the opportunities for the companies, also a bit about the involvement of local authorities, but what is needed to make sure that basically the innovative digital technologies are applied also by the public sector to ensure green sustainability of towns and local authorities. So what is your solution for this? Go ahead, Florian.
I can give kind of an answer. I think for the public sector, local authorities, one action point is buildings. They can definitely reduce carbon energy in the building sector. Also transports, if they are in charge of local transport, for example, local public transport, they also can invest in a better infrastructure. And also a larger concept is smart cities. And smart cities, you have many different topics like energy and many different topics. And most of the time, public authorities are in charge of these different topics. So they have to invest, in clean technologies and in digital technologies as enabler for those sectors.
Thank you, Florian. Maybe Marc, you can add something.
Yes, yeah. When I see that question on public sector, I also want to answer through another questions and asking actually a participant and the audience. Don't we think that this is also an opportunity for the academic world to revisit actually many curriculums? Because the topics we addressed today, Green Deal on one side, digital on the other one, I would consider those topics as transverse discipline that are relevant actually to all other academic disciplines. So I think what we also expect from the academic sphere, from the public sphere, is not to continue to have siloed discipline, but to say that digital combined with sustainability is a unique opportunity to actually break silos, favor cross-disciplinary practices that will give also some new avenues in terms of education, skills, competencies across the world.
Thank you, Marc. I think that also Gilles can add something on the role of public sector.
You wanted to follow up. Florian mentioned smart cities, but I think, in this moving into a post-pandemic world, I think it's very important for local authorities, the public sector, to look at the smart villages. I was talking earlier about, we have this opportunity to start to plan a world that is more resource efficient, but also better for communities. And I think, where you don't necessarily work at home, but you work locally, maybe remotely from your organization, but starting to think about smart villages and really kind of planning for ways in which we can use what we've learned during the pandemic to enhance lives, to actually build stronger communities. I think that fits very well with the kind of the outcomes of going to a more circular economy as well, where we have more life extension, repair, reuse happens at a local level. I think we need to start thinking holistically how we can engage digital technology to help us plan these things in a way that works for all of us. So I think we are at an opportunity, and a lot of that opportunity lies with the public sector to start thinking ahead and planning ahead, not just for greener lives, but for very much better lives with better air quality, more time to spend with our friends and family, and less time spent on the commute, and getting to know our communities and being very supportive there. So I think there's a huge opportunity that can be harnessed through using digital technologies in the public sector.
Thank you very much, Gilles. I see here another question that is very interesting to me. So it seems that we all agree that we have to accelerate the twin transition, and that Europe can lead by example. However, we all know, and Marc confirmed also this is not just a new challenge, it's a global challenge that requires a systemic approach. So I would like to ask all of you, what is your take on accelerating the twin transition at the global level? And in this respect, I have also two specific initiatives to mention. First, the upcoming COP26. So what is your view? What the digital sector can play in the upcoming COP26? And the second one is the Trade and Technology Council, so the possible cooperation on digital between the EU and the United States. So I would really like to hear your voice on these 2 points.
I'm happy to kind of tackle the kind of global dimension. I think that one of the reasons COP26 is happening in person despite the pandemic is obviously because of the necessary momentum, but also because not all areas of the world are able to use digital technology to participate effectively in a virtual event. And I think that teaches us a big lesson about what is needed in the future, and that Europe can be a leader on how to deploy digital technologies for a greener, more effective transition. But we must remember that there are large parts of the world where growth is a real concern, and that we need to make sure that the available technologies are there for them to allow green growth in the global south in a way that they can really harness this. So I think when we think about both leading on how to deploy these technologies, but also how to share them, we need to have that global aspect in mind and recognize that actually COP26, I've mentioned the transparency issue, but I think the very fact that it's happening in person is because not everybody is able to equally use those digital technologies at the moment.
Thank you, Gilles. Daniel is reconnecting. Daniel, I hope that now you can hear us better. Okay. As we can see, also in Europe, sometimes digital technology may not work properly. So, Daniel, now you have the floor. Please go ahead.
Yeah, like I hope it works now. Like on the COP, and happy to hear and see afterwards what Gilles' take was on it, because I missed that because I was backstage trying to get in a connected way. This will be an essential climate conference where really the goal is, the recent science really shows that when we look at the global climate ambition, that we're quite behind where we need to be in order to reach the 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees maximum, but 1.5 degrees ideally scenario. Like the ambitions of all the nations in the world are enough to reach that goal. That will be a key thing to do at this very important summit. And my boss is working relentlessly on that, Frans Timmermans. And that will be ultimately, if we have a good outcome, and that's still what we strive for, if we have a good outcome, it's a very big opportunity for digital technology, because you will then, all these nations will travel home from Glasgow and then think, well, we now committed to all these very ambitious pledges, how we're going to do it. And then you will have worldwide a discussion on how can we use technology, especially the digital one, to make this work. So I think that's a massive opportunity. And I think that now, also thanks to Digital Europe, but also NGOs and other parties, we're quite far in the thinking of this in Europe. And I think that this should be one of the things that we really should try to be a trailblazer in the world too. The twin transitions and how they go well together. I think that this should be the digital action and climate action and making together, that should be leadership made in Europe.
Thank you, Daniel. Maybe on this specific aspect of the global perspective, I would like also to have the take of Marc. You work for a global company, so what is the state of play outside EU?
You mean the state of play in which matter?
In the twin transition, in the digital transition, how digital is supporting green action also outside EU?
Yes, I mean, for again, it's I'm completely biased in my way to answer to that, okay? Because we make it so much as a purpose of the company to be a role model in sustainability, and to make sure that the way we act is contagious from end-to-end perspective. It means from our suppliers, the selection of our suppliers, the selection of everything what we do and what we manufacture, in also the customer we serve, that we engaged into being very clear into their own goal and their own targets on the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 of the carbon emission, to assign to ourselves and to be each of us role model. Again, going back to it's a systemic answer, and the systemic answer starts by applying to yourself a very high level of ambition to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. So I don't know if I really answer your question there, but by being global in all continents of the world, we'll try definitely to convey a purpose that is end-to-end, contagious to all stakeholders we interact with.
Thank you, Marc. Once again, I like your answer because I really believe that one of the role of European companies would be to ensure that their global value chain comply with EU standards, environmental, social, so on and so forth. So this can be really the way to make sure that the transition happen also outside the EU without, policy push, but, by providing private incentives. We also have another question from Business Finland. The silver lining of the Corona crisis could be that if forced us to really collaborate in a new way internationally, we do cooperate. So climate crisis is an even bigger crisis of existential level. How could we take the learning of this health crisis into a new level of climate sense of urgency? So how can we make sure that we put the money where the mouth is? Gilles, do you want to intervene? You are muted, Gilles.
I think actually what the current health crisis has demonstrated is urgency, but I don't think it's been a particularly strong example of collaboration. Unfortunately, I think it started out a little bit and probably has continued to a certain extent as a little bit of nations looking to their own well-being first before looking around at their neighbours. And I think one of the things that we haven't been able to tackle is that need for global vaccination in a timely way. So I think it's perhaps not the best example of collaboration, although it is an example of urgency. I think one of the things it has shown us, certainly in the developed world, is that we can change very quickly when we need to. But I think also that, people's appetite for the hair shirt or, measures that are impinge on their freedom are relatively limited. There have been, demonstrations against that after a period of time. So I think the lessons from the pandemic are we can change, that there is a great appetite to change, that we've not been very good at collaboration and we need to be better at collaboration. Let's look at what happened in the pandemic and think about how we can improve upon that. Recognize that the chances of future pandemics are actually increased because of climate change, species mixing in ways that they haven't before because of changing migration patterns and so forth, and warmer temperatures. So all of these things kind of come together. But I would love to say that we've learned enough from the pandemic to help us solve the climate crisis. But I think we've probably not done our best on either at the moment.
Thank you, Gilles. Maybe Florian, you want to add something about the impact of the pandemics on the tech sector?
So, yeah, I would say two things. First of all, I think we can change. Indeed, the pandemic has shown that we can, have a quick change at one moment. And I think what's sometimes difficult for the climate change is that sometimes it's on the long term. So people don't realize enough how much they have to change. And now, you had the flooding this year. Okay, it was very difficult and dramatic, but at the same time, it's maybe kind of a awareness creation for, look, we really have to do something. And the second point is about the digital technologies. Indeed, I think digital technologies could really help for the pandemic for some aspects, and could bring solutions. And I am for the green transition. I think it's the same. The digital technologies can really also support this transition. And I think people and I think companies are really now getting aware of this potential, and I think we really have to work together in order to implement it now.
Thank you, Florian. I would like to take the last question from the audience before moving to the concluding remarks. It's a question from Ericsson Research. So the impression is that the climate solutions that are referring to new technologies, electrical cars, renewable power solutions, gain more attention than those associated with efficiencies. So at the same time, we see that efficiency at all levels are key. And from the perspective of digital, often very much dependent on digital technologies. So how could we get those more into the center of climate mitigation strategy and discussion? So how can we focus more on the efficiency side of the climate, the fight against climate change? Marc, maybe you can add something.
Yeah, maybe two pieces of reflection on that one. I agree, and unfortunately there is a hidden part of the iceberg that is not probably enough known from the public, which is a contribution of technologies to efficiency. And here we go back to what we said earlier: measurements, KPIs, advertising those KPIs, making them public. Precise enough per sector, granular enough to really acknowledge the contribution of technologies to efficiency. Make sure as well that everything we see in the world, which is around more data, more technology, more streaming, more gaming, in the respective lives of each of our families. I mean, all of that is getting done with a super high support of technologies. Is it the 5Gs being much more efficient than some other technologies, computing technologies, data center energy performance. So the energy efficiency is in everywhere of new development and innovation from the ICT world, actually. And we probably need, it's a very good point, to make it more visible and to make it more publicly known that there is a strong contribution to efficiency thanks to technologies.
Thank you, Marc. I see that also Daniel wants to intervene.
Yeah, thanks a lot, because that also allows me to respond to another point that was made already on skills, because I think that the example, and I really think Ms. Bergmark for asking this question, one of the examples that she gave in, the shift to electric cars is a prime example of how two transitions really can go hand in hand, because the electric car, the possibilities you have to use software, connect them, make them work with systems are huge. So this is a typical example where if you get it right, you can do two transformations into one, because electric car is more suitable for that. The reality of the climate agenda, the urgency, is that you have to decarbonize, and you have to decarbonize sectors pretty fast. So you have to talk about new technologies, but I totally take the point, and it's completely visible for me, that at the same time you need to connect these things that you're working on. And that's the huge opportunity. It's also the massive challenge that we have, because what you're saying in the automotive supply chain, for instance, is like, and we need to shift to electric mobility, and you need to work on the connected car automation. That is a very, very formidable challenge. And that's why it's so essential that we don't only set targets and the regulations on cars, for example, on the emissions, but that we also work on a transition pathway, especially with employees and in supply chain. And that's exactly what we are doing. And I'm working hand in hand with Commissioner Breton's cabinet on it, exactly to make these two things come together, because that is a message also good for the more tech-savvy audience here. I see a massive opportunity in combining these two transitions, and then we have a challenge to get it right for the workers and their skilling. I think there are two central skills for the economy of the future: electrification and digitization.
Thank you, Daniel. And we are all looking forward to the publications of these transition pathways in several sectors, because that can really make the twin transition very operational. I think that is now time to starting wrapping up this excellent panel. So I would like to ask all the panelists, what is the main message that you would like the audience to take away? You have 1 minute each, and I would like to start from Daniel.
No, I will keep it really short. Like I've noted lots of things down in the panel that were also very useful for me to use, but I will keep it very short. And I don't really want to sound like a Jerry Bruckheimer film. These are the big action movies. But the point that Marc made is really true. We are talking now a lot about policies and transition pathways, and advocacy we will really talk about is a big challenge for humankind to get two really big transitions right. And the climate change is a human existential crisis, but at the same time, the power to innovate of humanity can and will not be beaten. And that is really my key message here. Trust in all that we should have the trust that we can do this.
Thank you, Daniel. Florian.
I think now the point is we have to make it a reality and to create awareness for the authorities, companies, and citizens. And one sensitive point as well, I think big companies, maybe they know about it, but SMEs is also a key point, for awareness creation. But let's work all together.
Thank you, Florian. Gilles.
I think the big thing is that we have, over the last 10, 15 years, been able to do things that we never thought would be possible because of digital technology. And I think the opportunities now are that climate change using the dual transition can provide us with a much better world and better lives. It shouldn't be seen as a costly burden, but as something that provides a real opportunity. And we need to start painting a picture of what that future looks like so that we can bring people with us and that they take the right training to be part of that transition. So I think it's a massive opportunity.
And finally, Marc, your takeaway.
Yeah, my takeaway, actually, I would have one sentence and 3 words. The sentence is actually that the more we know, the faster we decide, because we talk here of topic where we need now a certain sense of urgency, and I want to relate also those let's say a sense of urgency to knowledge. So the more we know, the faster we decide. And the 3 words out of our discussion that I want to keep is, the first one is skills. It's about a lot about again education. Second, measurement. Third, carbon data as a key metric. So skills, measurement, carbon data, my 3 words takeaway.
Thank you, Marc. So I see that we are perfectly on time, and I believe that this has really been an insightful event. And the panelists have done such a great job today that there is real no need for me to add any concluding remarks. Probably I can just try to quickly wrap up the main points discussed today. And yes, we start from the 3 pillars presented by Cecilia, I would say: the skills and training, the standards and interoperability, and the need for investment in research and development. We have learned about this double role of the digital technology. On the one hand, a powerful tool to measure the climate change and the emissions, and on the other hand, a powerful tool to make the manufacturing system, the transport system, more efficient and more energy efficient, and also more climate friendly. We also understand that there is a huge role for the Commission and Europe to play, to lead by example, but there is also a strong need to go at the local level, involve local authorities, but also involve small and medium enterprise. And to do this, we need certainly more awareness about the solutions. And again, we need more investment in skills. And we also need some, as Florian mentioned, the vertical measures, so sectoral measures in key sectors such as the transport, the building, the energy, the manufacturing. I like also very much the view proposed by Gilles that this transition is really a win-win. It means to reduce the impact on climate change, but also to improve the life of everyone. So to make this transition also fairer and more beneficial to citizens. So before closing, I would like to thank once again Daniel, Florian, Gilles, and Marc for the fantastic panel discussion, Cecilia for her keynote, and Digital Europe to arrange such an impactful event. I invite all of you to download, read, and share the study that today has been published by Digital Europe. Also, please do not forget that the web platform hosting this event will stay active for 30 minutes after the conclusion of the webinar. And this is a nice opportunity for you to network with other participants. Thank you again for attending. It's now time for me to say goodbye until next time, and leaving the floor to Cecilia for concluding remarks.
Hello, everyone. So first of all, thank you so much to the panelists and to you, Felicia, for facilitating the whole conversation. I think, we also have still work to do in Digital Europe. I think the next event we have to also gather some of the key industry leaders from the 5 industries that we mentioned at the start. If we want those sectorial plans and if we want things to happen, I think the English say the proof is in the pudding, and you need to walk the talk. So this is definitely not the last time that we will make the point that there is no climate action without digital action, and that we play a major role in actually making this happen, and that we take that role as a facilitator to bring down CO2 levels very, very serious. Thank you so much to all of you for participating, and thank you to our great panelists, and see you back in a while.